This is the multiple award-winning GardenDC podcast, the podcast about everything gardening in the Washington, D.C. and Mid-Atlantic region. I'm your host, Kathy Jentz. I'm the editor of Washington Gardener magazine. Our content is aimed at gardening enthusiasts, people who grow everything, from edibles to ornamentals, natives to exotics. If it grows in our area, that's what we talk about. Welcome to episode 263 of the GardenDC podcast. Are you a chocoholic? Do you dream of planting a chocolate garden or growing your own cacao tree? In this episode, we talk with Sheri Ann Richerson all about gardening with chocolate. The plant profile is on Fritallaria, and we share what's going on in the garden, as well as some upcoming local gardening events in the What's New segment. We close out with a last word on Past, Present, and Future Me by Christy Page of Green Prince. I'm a big chocolate lover myself, and I have a recipe for chocolate zucchini bread that is absolutely sublime. It's so moist and chocolatey, no one ever guesses there is any zucchini in it. Be sure to listen to the end of the episode for that. This episode, we're joined by Sheri Ann Richerson. She's going to talk to us all about her new book, A Chocolate Lover's Garden. Welcome, Sheri Ann.
Thank you so much. It's good to be here.
So, Sheri Ann, you're a longtime garden writer, author, speaker, multi-hyphenate, right? Homesteader, all the good things. Before we get into that and the Chocolate Lover's Garden, let's rewind all the way to baby Sheri Ann, and we like to ask our guests here at the GardenDC podcast, were you born with chlorophyll in your veins and a green thumb?
I very well may have been.
So were you from a family of gardeners?
My mother and my grandparents always had gardens, the usual things, impatiens, geraniums, and that just never excited me. And my mother would always try to buy me a flat of half-dead impatiens for my birthday, which is August. So, they were pretty sad around that time of year and always encouraged me to plant them, which I did to not hurt her feelings. But it just was too common and not my jam. So when I found a plant called candy mint, because I wanted something to nurture and grow, and impatiens was not it. I brought it home. I found out that it had many, many uses besides just being edible, and I loved the scent, and it kind of took off from there. When Garden Web came online, because I've been online many, many years, I joined that, and that is how I found out about tropical plants, and specifically the aroma cacao, the chocolate tree.
And I know that you have had a website for years on exotic gardening. Tell me how that came about.
I wanted to be a writer for, probably since elementary, junior high. And in high school, I took both journalism and creative writing. My journalism teacher thought I was the bee's knees, and my creative writing teacher told me that I would never be published. I was the worst writer he had ever had in class. And so I started leaning a lot towards journalism. And when I got online back in 1996, it was late 1996, I started looking around, and Sweet 101 was there. They were looking for a writer on tropicals and exotics, which I had just started learning about. I had just got a greenhouse, of course, Garden Web, and people sending me everything and anything. And so I signed up. And over the years, going from Garden Web to Webseed, shutting down, Bella Online, and many, many other sites that would hire me to write for them, and I would be there for a little while, and they were gone. And so the owner of Host Nexus, Lawrence, which is my hosting company to this day, contacted me through Webseed And he said, "We're contacting everyone. We like your site. If you would like to host with us and get your own domain, I will guide you every step of the way." And so we named it Exotic Gardening, and he moved all of my stuff, and it just kind of went from there.
And so you have quite a following in the exotic gardening world.
Yes, I do. People that have been with me many, many years.
And we should talk about the fact that you are not in a tropical climate. So describe where you are located. Most of our listeners are in the mid-Atlantic US, and then maybe talk a little bit about your growing conditions as well.
Okay, I am actually located in Marion, Indiana. I live on a 2.5-acre farm. I have greenhouses, and for the past several years, a grow tent that Viva Sun kindly sent me for free to test out. And I have had everything happen here that you can imagine. I have tried to grow plants outside that should not grow here. Palm trees, bananas, gingers. I have been successful with some and others die. I have grown all kinds of tropical plants, orchids, clove, nutmeg, a vanilla orchid, of course, the aroma cacao, all of the plants that I could get my hands on that had some kind of use other than just being pretty. And I have had some that are just pretty, but I tend to go for ones like Lang Lang that also have a scent and can have that scent extracted. So there have been times that the weather has been so bad that I found out that I have exactly 11 minutes when I lose power to get my greenhouse back up to temperature, or I will lose my plants. I have lost plants that way. That's how I know that. I've had hail destroy a greenhouse, and because it was cold here, because I am in zone 6, I lost my plants. The grow tent is an absolute lifesaver because it's down in my basement, and there is no way, even if we have a power outage, that it's going to get so cold down there that I would lose my plants this time around. So definitely challenging here, but I like that challenge.
And I know a lot of what you write about as well is on the homesteading side of things. So that certainly comes out with your DIY approach and being able to kind of, I'm going to say, MacGyver some solutions to those growing challenges.
Yes, I have had plants that I have wrapped the pots in blankets, and we have put stakes and saran wrap around the foliage to try to keep them warm enough to survive when we have had power outages before I had the grow tent. So, and I also have a wood burner. So, because I feel like you just have to have backups if you're going to grow tropical plants in this cold of a climate.
I recall one time going on a trip to England and coming back to a northeaster, one of the few in our mid-Atlantic that's hit, and the power was out for 6 days. And I actually didn't lose any houseplants, shockingly, but my neighbors lost all their tropical fish tanks. They had bought a generator as an emergency, but it was too little too late. So that taught me some lessons about that. And then also, of course, everything in my freezer.
Yeah.
Also was lost. And that had not occurred to me when I went away for the trip that January.
Yes, and I have done that. I keep a lot of blankets on hand because you can actually wrap your refrigerator and your freezer in multiple layers of blankets and kind of tie them. And as long as you keep them closed during a power outage, the blankets will insulate them enough that you are less likely to lose all of your food.
Good tip, because that kind of, burned me, so to speak, as using freezing as a way to preserve food. Like, that's what I was like, the electric source is for the birds, that canning and other things like drying was a much more fail-safe way to preserve food.
Yes, I agree. I can and dehydrate as much as I can. And I have a freeze dryer on my wish list. So maybe someday.
Nice. Yeah, I have a dehydrator, but not a freeze dryer. That would be interesting. Because who doesn't love astronaut ice cream? That's my favorite freeze-dried item.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah. That is the best at the Air and Space Museum here in DC. I think that's a top seller. Everybody loves that freeze-dried astronaut ice cream. It would be fun to do that at home. So tell me more about what you are growing in your home garden. Is it mainly food outside, or do you have ornamental plants as well, in addition to your greenhouses and exotic plants?
I grow a lot of herbs and fruits and vegetables, but I do have ornamentals. When I choose an ornamental, it is usually because it has a medicinal value, it has an edible value, or I can do something else with it, like make paper, make soap. Now, not every plant that I have is like that, but I really think about, what is the purpose of this plant and what can I do with it? Because my goal is to be able to be completely self-sufficient on my 2.5 acres.
Yeah, I would think self-sufficiency and being able to just source from things on site, that's the ultimate goal, but I don't know of anybody who actually has accomplished that.
We had been at one point to the point that the only thing that we bought was meat. We had our chickens, of course, and turkeys, and I've raised pigs. I raised goats. But as far as the beef, we would still have to buy that, and we do sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
The other food I can raise here, I've had tilapia tanks for aquaponics. I actually lost those during a power outage because tilapia need the warmth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that can be rough. And I was going to add that the goats brought up, are you under heavy deer pressure for your outside crops, or are you far enough away that the deer have other food sources?
I am actually the first house in the county on this side. So the water company is my neighbor, and we do have a few deer. It's not bad deer pressure. Mm-hmm. The issue that I have is groundhogs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they can be a booger, yes, so to speak. Yeah, once they move in and get used to a food source. And I was going to say your goats, as long as they are kept and not get into the food, they're probably not a problem either.
Yes, and people laugh at me. I'm also a master gardener, and our extension agent said that he could not believe I had goats and had decided to go that route with all of my plants. I learned using the small conduit on the bottom of the 6-foot chain link fence and securing it all across the bottom. And sometimes we put it on the top, but only if there's like a favorite area that they go to, because if a goat can push it and it will move, they will keep going. If they push it and it's sturdy, they will walk away and go someplace else. So I don't really have a problem with the goats. And we have, besides the chain link fence, I also have electric movable netting so that I can move them about in the yard and have them do cleanup on things like those invasive honeysuckle trees that just want to come from everywhere, and areas that are hard to get in to maintain.
Yeah, that would be a great thing to maybe borrow some of those goats from you, Sheri Ann, for some invasive cleanup. Do you have any tips for dealing with those groundhogs?
I catch them. We set traps, and we do not relocate because groundhogs can be very aggressive. I saw one go after my stepdad as a child, and he jumped on the car hood. My mom and I were in the car, and our full-size German Shepherd diverted the groundhog, and the groundhog took the German Shepherd down. So that's not an animal that I mess with. It's not one I try to relocate. They will come back. Groundhogs are edible, however.
Yeah, I guess they are. We'll let that be up to the taste of the listener.
Yes.
So you have several books that you've written, and I think people might be familiar with you written in the Complete Idiot's Guide series that a lot of people know about. seen obviously a lot of computer books in that series, but they also have gardening ones, and you've written Seed Saving and Starting and also Year-Round Gardening.
Yes.
And you have a couple of fiction books as well. Tell us quickly about some of those.
My newest one is called Under the Dragon's Eye, that I wrote when I was 15. That was the submission for my creative writing class. I received an F on it. And that's when he literally wrote on the paper that I would never be a published writer. I did not know how to write. I needed to just give this up. Very discouraging. And when I got a computer, he typed it from the paper into the computer. And I thought, I'm not going to give up. I don't know what I'm going to do with this, but I'm not. So as I've been writing nonfiction, I decided to submit this fiction work to a friend and see what their thoughts was. If they thought it was, absolutely horrible like my teacher did, or, what. And they wrote me some very encouraging words back, and I was actually shocked. And I posted that on Facebook, and my publisher saw it, and she said, "Would you send me that book over?" And I said, "Yes." And so I sent it, and she loved it. And I have been contacted by many, many people that have read the book and absolutely love it. Several suggested that I write a sequel to it. So I have signed the contract for that, and I am working on that. And I am really excited because I just feel like it goes to show you have to follow your own path, and you have to keep trying, and you can't let one rejection stop you, because if you do, you're never going to reach your goal.
Mm-hmm. I think that's so true. Yeah, and I'm glad you didn't let one person discourage you. Just that one opinion, probably from a very grumpy person who wasn't very happy themselves. And
Yes.
Congratulations on publishing that and the upcoming
Thank you.
sequel. So let's talk now about your new book, The Chocolate Lover's Garden, that you co-wrote with Tom Ogren. How did that come about, co-writing with Tom?
Tom and I actually met at a garden symposium. It was garden writers back then. And he had already known about the fact I was growing chocolate and doing some different things. And it was at the one in Chicago. We actually met in the botanical garden by a Theobroma cacao tree. I kid you not. He pointed it out and he said, "Did you see that?" And I said, "But of course I did." And so we became friends. When I went home, my Theobroma cacao tree that was growing in my living room had actually flowered. So I was thrilled, because that kind of said to me, you can do more than just grow this leafy tree. It's going to flower. It's going to produce pods. You've got this. And Tom and I, of course, would talk by email and call each other once in a while. And at the time, his agent, I'm sorry, I was looking for the word. His agent had asked him if he had heard about chocolate-covered mint leaves, because they were all the rage at the events she attended. And he asked me, and I said, I actually haven't. And we got to talking. She suggested the book. We searched and searched for publishers. We could not find one that wanted to take on this book. And I had sat and worked on this book over the years. Tom had sent some stuff. And I said something to my publisher now about it. And she said, "Send it to me." And I said, "Okay." And do you believe this morning we had cracked the top 100 in chocolate baking on Amazon, and this book was at number 90.
Nice. Congratulations on that. And
Thank you.
so you wrote this, I'm going to say, kind of long distance. You guys didn't meet in person to write this together. Did you divide up the chapters? How did it come about that you were co-writing?
Well, originally we was going to divide up the chapters because Tom is in California. I'm here in Indiana. So originally we was going to divide up the chapters. And That is not what happened. Tom was unable to work on the book at the point that I signed the contract. And I talked to Tom and I said, I would still like to use your contributions to the book. And I am happy to give you co-writing credit because that's fair. That's the right thing to do because, we started this together. Let's finish it together. So that's what Tom and I agreed on. And there were chapters in the book that I was very unsure of myself about. There were chapters Tom had picked. And I did the research. I kept them in. It's chapter 15, High on Chocolate, The Curious Case of Cocoa Cannabis. I didn't want that chapter in the book. Tom did. I didn't want it in there because I was afraid that it would give the book a certain stigma, and I know absolutely nothing about cannabis at all. So I just didn't feel like it was something I wanted there. And Tom said yes. And I sent my publisher the original proposal that we had been sending out, and she saw it. And I said, well, I just don't think I'm going to do that if Tom's not going to work on it and write that. And she alluded that maybe this should be left in there. And I said, oh my gosh, are you serious? And several people that I knew I was working on this said, you're really not going to take that out, are you? And I said, I know nothing. So I spent a lot of time researching that chapter. And I have to say, it was fascinating. I had no idea that there was chocolate cannabis and that this was a whole thing that had been going on forever. It just learned something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to say, I've never heard of chocolate cannabis myself. I mean, obviously I know, when you smoke marijuana, you might get the munchies and crave chocolate, but does it actually smell and taste like chocolate?
That's what I'm understanding. And there are actually people breed this and then they get together and they decide who has the best.
I can see for the chocolate brownies recipes that you want something with a more chocolate, flavor rather than the more, I'm going to call it skunk-like scent of cannabis.
My husband, who actually took some classes in college on drugs and drug use and all the things, I had him read over it and tell me what he thought, and he said that I really nailed it.
Well, it's good to hear. Yeah, I think if you're interested in pharmacopoeia and herbals and medicines, that is a very fascinating chapter. And then I think it's funny that they call themselves bud tenders, like the cannabis bud. That was a kind of new term for me too. And the book is full of chocolate recipes and preparations, but let's dial back to how it all started with the chocolate tree that you were growing in your living room. How did you source that original cacao seed or bean, or how did you start that plant? Because it's not something you commonly find at a garden center.
I actually was doing two different sourcings. I was on a garden web and I was searching, and people were sending me plants, and I found out they don't ship well because they have to be shipped bare root. They don't like to be bare root. They don't like to get dry like that. They are a rainforest plant, so they like their moisture and then a little drying time and more moisture. And so getting the plant shipped to me, I had one that survived, and only because we saran wrapped it and created a greenhouse and just really babied it. Seeds, once they are removed from the pod, are chocolate. They are not viable as soon as they come out of that pod and they start drying up. So my friend Brian from Puerto Rico contacted me, and because he was sending me all kinds of tropical plants. And he said, I can send you a Theobroma cacao pod, but it's not going to be cheap because of shipping. And I said, let's do this. And I also traveled all over, including back to Chicago. And I was collecting beans as these botanical gardens were opening the pods and showing people. And so those beans I would put in moist paper towels inside of little Ziploc baggies and bring those home. And by doing that, I was able to keep them alive long enough for them to germinate and get planted. But Brian would send me pods of all different kinds of theobroma trees. And I would open them up and I would germinate them. I typically get 100% germination on the pods. And to this day, I just got 20 pods from him a couple months ago. And he said, you have been getting these pods from me for over 25 years. And it has been fascinating to see all the different types of theobroma pods. I just had one that absolutely stunk like mango. And it does not make good chocolate. I wanted one of the pods so that I could experience what it was like. I germinated all the seeds because I knew, they roast them and they turn the seeds into nuts. And I didn't want to do that. I couldn't get past that smell.
And so for growing conditions, do you just use regular potting mix to germinate them? How do you get them started?
I cut open the pods, which can have 30 to 50 seeds in each pod. I individually wrap each seed in a moist paper towel and I put it in a baggie. They can germinate as fast as 24 hours after they are wrapped, or I have had some take a little over a week to germinate. Mm-hmm. Once they are germinated, I use the little peat pots, or sometimes I've used the little cow pots, and I use Happy Frog potting soil. I will fill the little pot with potting soil about 3/4 of the way up. Make sure everything is good and wet. I will put the germinated seed in with the little root pointing down, and then I cover with vermiculite. Maybe a little vermiculite under the seed and a little vermiculite over the seed. And I just keep them in trays of water.
And are they under a grow light, or do you have a heat source, like a heating pad under them?
No, I don't use. Mine are in my grow tent now, but I never used a heat source with them. And theobroma cacao is actually an understory tree, and they can get disease if they get too much sun. So I have had grow lights. I certainly do have a big grow light in my grow tent, but these trees do so much better if they are in a shaded area like they would be in nature, and the leaves will get really brown if they're getting too much sun. They will also get brown on the edges if they don't get enough humidity. So I keep my grow tent at about 80% humidity. Right now, we are running it at about 64, 65 degrees. They are doing fine. Puerto Rico, where these trees can grow, sometimes gets down to 50 degrees. So they will sort of go into a dormancy at that stage, but they will still live.
Yeah, I've been to some Caribbean islands like St. Lucia where I've seen them growing naturally.
Yes.
And you're right, they're an understory tree. They're usually in very deep shade, some of them. And I'm always surprised at the amount of fruit, and the size of the pods are not small. They're fairly large pods that hold the cacao beans. But how do you pollinate them? So when you're growing them at home, you don't have those natural pollinators.
No, we don't have midges. Well, we do have midges, but not the same midges. Mm-hmm. And just a paintbrush and pollinating by hand. Mm-hmm. And, for people that don't have a lot of light, they're in an apartment, they're in a nursing home, or they just have a dark house, theobroma cacao really makes a great houseplant. And if you don't want the pods, just don't pollinate them. The flowers will fall off on their own. Mm-hmm.
And you were saying the one flower of the one variety smelled like mango. What did the usual ones smell like vanilla?
No, I don't think they really have a scent that I pick up on. But the one definitely smelled like mango, and it was just, ugh. Well, we had to use a hacksaw to cut it open because the shell was so hard. And it was really fascinating. I dried the pod And Brian told me that they use the pods to make cups and bowls and things like that. And he said it'll keep forever. And I always try to dry my pods from any that gets shipped into me. And then when they start disintegrating, because they will, the regular Theobroma cacao ones will, I will crush them up and put them in my garden or in houseplants. I just have to keep animals away because chocolate is toxic to pets.
Yeah, I was going to say that they do sell bagged cacao or, crushed up shells and things as a byproduct, as an organic mulch and a top dressing. And it's great, but you don't obviously want your dogs eating them.
Yes, or your chickens in my case.
Yeah, you would hope the chickens would have more smarts, but they don't. So
no, it smells so good.
Yes, it does, but it smells good in the garden. So that brings us to having your own garden of chocolate, so to speak. So you can have that chocolate ground up shells as a top dressing or compost in your garden, and that'll make it a chocolate themed garden right there.
GardenDC will be back after this short break.
In the book The Urban Garden by Kathy Jentz and Terry Spate, you'll find dozens of inspiring and creative ways to grow flowers, shrubs, vegetables, herbs, and other plants in small spaces and with a limited budget. Whether you want to grow on a balcony, rooftop, front stoop, or a tiny urban patio, turn your growing dreams into reality and build a gorgeous and unique garden that showcases your personal style while still being functional and productive. With the ingenious ideas and resourceful tactics found here, you'll be maximizing yields and beauty from every square inch of your space. No matter what you grow, the 101 amazing growing ideas found in the urban garden will turn your tiny urban yard into a treasure trove of green you'll be proud to share with family and friends. Buy your copy today at your local retail bookseller or order it online now at Amazon.com or bookshop.org.
Let's talk about those plants that are chocolate colored, chocolate scented, chocolate flavored, that we can grow maybe in a zone 6-7 garden. And let's maybe start with the chocolate colored.
I like chocolate cosmos. Is really pretty, but it really, to me, does not have a chocolate scent.
I agree. I've never gotten a good scent off of them. They have a beautiful dark brown petal, but if you're looking at that packet of chocolate Cosmo seeds and thinking that it's going to smell like chocolate, it does not.
No, it does not. There are chocolate colored begonias, the leaves, and they are beautiful. They will not live in the ground here, so you have to bring them in, and no chocolate scent. There is a chocolate geranium that has chocolate colored flowers, and it is a perennial here. Very, very pretty. I like Akevia chocolate vine. It does have maybe a chocolate vanilla scent, maybe just faint of chocolate. And if you have two varieties, you can get fruit. The downside of these is they spread. They are invasive, and if you don't have it someplace where you can control the runners, you're going to have it all over your yard like I do. Clematis, it was the Montana that I had that is supposed to have a really strong chocolate smell. I didn't think it has a smell, but I didn't think it was strong chocolate. But it also did not come back for me.
Yeah, Clematis Montana, that can be a tricky one. And I would say you really have to put your face into it to get the chocolate scent. It's not like other clematis where it's wafting on the wind and very highly scented.
Yes, there are lots of plants with dark foliage. Some are a little more black, some are a little dark brown, depends on sunlight. And, I know there's a dahlia that is said to have chocolate colored leaves. I have not grown it. I also know there's one with black leaves, and I have to wonder if it's not a difference of how much sun that is getting. And I know they're supposed to be full sun, but I also know a lot of people push it by giving them a little shade. There is chocolate colored baptisia. There is Sheri Baby Orchid, that is said to have a chocolate smell.
Yeah, I have Sherry Baby is one of the few orchids that I allow myself because of curious kitties who like to dismantle orchids. But I would say it's more on the vanilla chocolate side of things, you know, kind of that blend. I wouldn't say it's a strong chocolate smell, but it is a very pleasant fragrance.
Yes. And of course, the aroma has no chocolate smell. I mean, no smell at all.
So until you open that pod to expose the beans, there's not really anything there.
I notice the smell not so much when I open the pod and I start to ferment the beans, because I do make my own chocolate. When I start to ferment the beans, I notice a slightly fermented smell, maybe slightly yeasty, not overpowering at all.
Mm-hmm.
When I am drying the beans, I notice a smell, most definitely, but I would not call that a strong chocolate. But as soon as I put those in the oven to roast them, that's when I get my chocolate smell.
And yeah, I would say, having visited at various botanic gardens where they have the plants growing usually in their front, you know, like a rainforest type area indoors, that you wouldn't notice a scent when you're just walking by. But again, if you take a chocolate making class, then you experience it.
Yes. Now, I do think the chocolate mints have a chocolate smell, but they also have a mint smell. There are chocolate mint scented geraniums that do have a chocolate smell, but again, you're going to get that mint.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I was looking at online, there's a Fritallaria called Chocolate Lily, and I would not recommend putting your nose in most Fritallarias.
No, it's a beautiful plant, and I have it growing here. One little bulb that has been here for years and years and years and does not multiply itself. But it is beautiful when it blooms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But no, I'm not going to smell it.
And for those not familiar with the Fritillaria scent, it's just an off-putting scent, kind of skunk-like. Not really anything that you would have as a cut flower in the house.
Yes. If people really want to grow a chocolate garden, there are many, many plants listed in the Chocolate Lover's Garden that can work. You can do it with perennials, or you can use a mix of annuals and tropicals in with your perennials. I would highly recommend that they go ahead and get the cacao mulch, because that is really the icing on the cake. But what people need to know about that is it does do very well at keeping the soil underneath of it moist.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people use the cacao mulch in their cornfields if they are growing like sweet corn that they want to sell. And they can get it in bulk because it is a little pricey by the bag. But if you live near a Hershey's or some other place that makes chocolate, a lot of times they will let you back your truck up and they will just load your truck up with it.
Yay. So everybody who's around Hershey, PA, in our region, and I've done that Hershey tour a few times, I'll definitely ask about that next time I'm through. And I was going to note, you had said annuals and perennials. Like, I think a lot of people are familiar with like a dark chocolate coleus or chocolate chip ajugas, and they just have that chocolate mottled look to them. But there's actually vegetables too that are in those chocolate hues.
Yes, tomatoes, peppers, so many. Some of the lettuces are said to be brown, and I have not grown one that's actually what I would call brown.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can use your imagination, yes, but some of the peppers and definitely the tomatoes. I love the brown purple tomatoes and the blacks.
Yeah, there's like chocolate cherry is a popular one. And for the lettuces that you're talking about, they're more on the bronzy side, like bronzy burgundy, the side of what you would call like a lettuce leaf. So there's still a green base to it.
And there is a Cherokee chocolate tomato too.
Mm-hmm. And then I was going to say on the herb side, of course, you mentioned the chocolate mints in those, but are there any other herbs that have a chocolate-like scent to them?
The scented geraniums are technically herbs.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to think. Not that I and as soon as I say this, I know somebody's going to say this one. Not that I can think of off the top of my head,
Mm-hmm.
but I am sure that there are some. There is also a hot cocoa rose.
But yeah, that's a beautiful rose. And
Yes.
same thing with the dahlias that you mentioned before that are in those kind of cocoa type coloring. It's not the scent again that you're going to have for that.
Yes. And chocolate daisy is a native perennial that is supposed to smell like chocolate. I've never been able to get it to germinate.
Yeah, I've
Yes.
seen seeds for it. I have not grown it myself. So if anybody listening out there has grown that one, let us know how that does for you.
Yes. And there are also chocolate-colored hollyhocks that I have not been able to get my hands on. Tom knew about those, and so that was one that he wanted to include in this. There are chocolate sweet peas. There is a Nicotiana bronze queen that I absolutely love.
Yeah, I love those. And of course, that's in the tobacco family. Not going to have a chocolate scent, but really cool looking flower. Along with, I think I'm a big fan of different violas and violets. There's a chocolate violet out there. Again, it's just on the dark side of things.
Yes, and there is a chocolate cherry sunflower that is not scented, but it is absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, I've seen more and more breeding of sunflowers for darker petals now. So there's the teddy bear line of sunflowers, and they'll have kind of that really dark burgundy tending towards brown, chocolate brown. So those are nice ones to have, especially in a mixed garden of different sunflowers.
Yes, and the herbs, there is the dark opal basil, which is more of a purple. There is also a smoky bronze fennel. Again, not a scent of chocolate, but kind of a lighter brown if you're looking for something. And there are also fruits that have the chocolate color, like black sapote and chocolate persimmons.
Yeah, and carob is one of those that, has often been suggested as a chocolate substitute. Yeah, that's my opinion of carob. It was big for people maybe who can't have dairy or want to go that route instead of
dogs.
Or dogs, yes. Or if you're trying to protect your dogs. But yes, I would say the brown figs are definitely chocolate-like and, almost kind of evoke that flavor too. So in your book, you talk about some chocolate humor, some famous chocolate lovers, and of course, fascinating facts about chocolate. It is not a small book, Sheri Ann. How long did it take you to write this book?
20.
Wow. So it shows. It is a very detailed book, lots to read there. So I highly recommend listeners get a hold of a copy. And with that, how do listeners contact you, Sheri Ann, to find out more?
They can come to any of my websites, SheriAnnRicherson.com, experimentalhomesteader.com, or exoticgardening.com. They can find me on social media under my name, Sheri Ann Richerson, or they can email me at SheriAnnRicherson@exoticgardening.com, and I will spell that out. It is SheriAnnRicherson@exoticgardening.com.
And we'll put a link to your main website in our show notes for listeners to go to as well. And I have to ask you about some of these famous lovers of chocolates and gardening. And we have to, of course, start with Thomas Jefferson because he's one of our founding farmers, founding gardeners. And what was his interest in chocolate?
I knew you was going to ask me. Well, we know that Thomas Jefferson collected a lot of different plants and brought them in. So in the late 18th century, chocolate was primarily enjoyed as a hot drink by the elite. And Jefferson developed a genuine taste for it during his time as a diplomat in Europe. He became an early American champion of chocolate, and he predicted a chocolate craze in the New World. So he argued that he could import cocoa beans directly into the United States, and that chocolate had a superiority of the article both for health and nourishment that would soon take over as a preference over tea and coffee in America. He wrote that chocolate would one day be as popular in the United States as it was in Spain, where shipments arrive quickly, while it is sweet. So the correspondence shows Jefferson wearing both his hats as the gardener economist figuring out supply chains for a plant product, and the epicure anticipating a nation of chocolate lovers. So he served and savored chocolate regularly.
I'm sure that was quite a treat for his guests. And,
Yes.
there's the irony there that chocolate is a native of the Americas, and it's the Europeans who popularized it and kind of brought it back to us.
Yes, and the fact that he saw it as a health food, because it is not milk chocolate, of course, but the dark chocolate, it has so many benefits, and he saw it all the way back then. And I just had a lady, because people are always dropping things off at my house, and she dropped off this news article, Daily Cocoa Cuts Inflammation by 70%. And I believe that. I have a whole book on cacao and health that has all of the documentation in the footnotes on it. And it is absolutely fascinating reading. I can't say it's exciting reading, but it is fascinating reading.
Yeah, I would say that's a good excuse to eat some chocolate every day, especially, the dark chocolate, 70% and higher. What's your personal preference, Sheri Ann?
I like 100% dark chocolate.
Wow, that's pretty
Yes.
strong.
And so what I am trying with some of the cacao beans that I have been drying and roasting, fermenting, drying and roasting, they are doing a thing called a double fermentation. And of course, people have different opinions on if double fermentation is really a thing or not. So the first batch of cacao beans I did this year, I did the double fermentation where you ferment, dry, and re-ferment. And that was okay. The second batch that I did, I put my spices in with my first ferment, and I only did one ferment. And then I dried and I roasted. I like dark roast, so I roast mine a lot darker than what some people will. And what I noticed was the first batch, I could barely taste the spices, the vanilla, all the things. The second batch, when I broke the bean out of its shell and I ate the nibs, was milder, not as bitter, and I most definitely picked up the taste of the vanilla paste that I had put in there. And it was homemade vanilla bean paste.
That sounds wonderful, Sheri Ann. I'm going to have to come by sometime next time I'm in Indiana and smell and taste some of those different chocolates.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your chocolate passion and your experience growing chocolate at home and suggestions for having a chocolate garden. Anything else you want to let our listeners know?
Yes. So there is a chapter in this book on how chocolate is grown and harvested. And they still use slave labor when they grow and harvest cacao on many of the farms that it grows on. Chocolate has a very dark side. It is not always sustainable. There are many small farmers, especially since 2020 now, that are starting to grow cacao in a sustainable way. They are not using slave labor. They are being socially responsible. And they are also going from the bean to the bar, growing it and making their own chocolate. And I really want to encourage people to consider this when they buy chocolate, because many of the big companies are buying from places that use slave labor. It's not sustainable. These are children that are being put to work in harvesting this cacao with big machetes. It's still done the same way as it was. It is hard work. It is hot work, and it pays very, very little. So I really want to encourage people to look into some of these bean-to-bar makers and some of these small farmers and really understand what the labels on your chocolate candies mean, because some of them don't mean what you might think they do.
Mm-hmm. I think that's very important, Sheri Ann. And I know I'm a member of Green America, and they do a lot of work on chocolate and getting some of the chocolate companies, especially the large ones, to be more sustainable, more earth-friendly, but also, of course, to treat the growers better and the sourcing to make that, a little bit more, we'll just call it human-friendly.
Yes, and we have right here in the United States, there are growers in Hawaii that are bean-to-bar. There are bean-to-bar places in California. So there are many companies that, like I said, have popped up since COVID that are here in the United States that are really using ethical chocolate and producing it themselves in small batches. And if you have never had small batch chocolate, or you think you don't like dark chocolate because it's bitter, I really want to encourage you to contact some of these places. They're listed in my book, a lot of them, and talk to them. One of the places in Hawaii will actually talk to you about what you like, what you don't like, and she can tailor chocolate specifically for you. I believe it is Barefoot Chocolatini, if I remember that right.
Well, that sounds like a wonderful treat for yourself for the holidays, or for a loved one is a great gift for them.
And the book, Chocolate Lover's Garden, makes a great gift too.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Sheri Ann.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me on.
GardenDC will be back after this short break.
Get low-maintenance alternatives to lawns with Ground Cover Revolution by Kathy Jentz. Reducing the lawn is among the biggest trends in homeownership, with an endless stream of homeowners looking for an eco-friendly alternative to a traditional turfgrass lawn. In the last few years alone, over 23 million Americans converted part of their lawn to a natural landscape, and now they're looking to do even more. The biggest challenge to adopting this new ideal of the perfect lawn? Knowing how and when to replace your turf, and which plants are the best ones for the job. Ground Cover Revolution is here with all the answers you need, and some you didn't even know you needed. Included are 40 in-depth profiles of plants that are perfect choices for replacing a grass lawn. There are options for sun, for shade, for dry and wet sites, and for various climates around the globe. There are choices that bloom, options that are evergreen, and selections that are deer-resistant. Kathy Jentz has also included an incredibly useful chart that gives you all the specifics on each of the 40 choices for quick reference and to make your ground cover selection process even easier. Whether you want to replace the entire lawn or just reduce the amount of land dedicated to turf, Ground Cover Revolution will help you usher in a new and improved idea of what a beautiful lawn should be. Ground Cover Revolution is available now wherever you buy books, including Amazon.com and Bookshop.org.
Fritallaria plant profile. Fritallaria flowers are unusual bell-shaped blooms that attract pollinators like bees and butterflies. Fritillarias are native to China, Central and Southern Europe, and North America. In fact, there are about 20 species of Fritillaria that are native to Western North America, including the checker lily, Fritillaria affinis, yellow Fritillaria, Fritillaria pudica, and chocolate lily, Fritillaria biflora. Fritillaria bulbs should be planted in October or November. Unlike other bulbs, these have no protective skins, so they will dry out quickly. That means you should plant them as soon after you purchase them or receive them as possible. Plant them in full sun to part shade. They need moist soil while actively growing, but prefer dry conditions when dormant. The bulbs should be planted deep in the soil, small bulbs at a depth of at least 4 inches and larger ones at 8 inches. The bulbs of the crown imperial, Fritallaria imperialis, have a hollow center at the place where last year's stem emerged. This is at the top of the bulb. To keep water from standing in this indentation, plant these bulbs at a slant or on their sides. Most Fritallarias bloom in April and May. Fritallaria look good either in groups of the same or more than one species in their genus. They also combine well with other spring flowering bulbs and perennial plants. Give taller Fritillaria some support once they emerge. You may also need to provide some extra water during and after their flowering period. Crown Imperial Fritillaria have eye-catching tall flowers in shades of yellow, orange-red, or red. Moles and other creatures dislike the smell of Crown Imperials. This makes this bulb a good way of repelling them from your garden. They may need to be covered by a mulching of leaves or compost to survive a hard winter, but are otherwise low care. The checkered lily, Fritillaria meleagris, naturalizes easily. They have a beautiful checkered pattern on their flower and make a great addition to any home garden. Fritillaria, you can grow that. What's new in the garden this week? Well, I'm enjoying the fall color of Ruby Slipper's oak leaf hydrangea. Over at the community garden plot, we're pulling out the last of the summer vegetables and harvesting cilantro. In tips that we shared this week on our social media, we talked all about winter preparations, including that you should remember to turn off your outside water and lift, drain, and store all of your hoses plus rain barrels. Don't risk the pipes or hoses bursting from frozen water trapped inside them. In local gardening events, an update to our last episode that the tours at Oak Hill Cemetery have been postponed to Sunday, November 16th. Due to a death in the family, historical ecologist Michael Gage will be changing that date, and you can find out more about that at Oak Hill Cemetery's website. On November 17th, a Monday evening at 7:30 p.m., the Silver Spring Garden Club is hosting a talk on invasive species, friend or foe. This lecture will feature a brief history of invasive species, particularly in the Mid-Atlantic area. The speaker is John Peter Thompson, who will provide some answers for what is invasive, what is native, and many people will be familiar with John Peter from his many years at Banky Gardens in Beltsville, Maryland. This meeting is free and open to all. It takes place at Brookside Gardens Visitor Center at Brookside Gardens in Wheaton, Maryland, and you can find out more about that at silverspringgardenclub.com. And then on Saturday, November 22nd from 6 to 9 p.m., Nature Forward is hosting Autumn Lights at the Woodend Nature Sanctuary in Chevy Chase, Maryland. They're going to celebrate a year of environmental progress and ring in the holidays together. You can enjoy an enchanted evening of food, drinks, music, and fun, and also shop for nature-themed gifts at the Woodend Nature Shop. The fee to attend is $75, and you can register at give.natureforward.org or at their events page. Happy gardening!
This is The Last Word by Christy Page at Greenprints with Past, Present, and Future Me, a story by Dory Herman Sample. The day greeted me with a crisp, sunny fall morning, a perfect invitation to tackle a long-awaited gardening project. Brimming with determination and a touch of self-righteous zeal, I donned my gardening clothes, fortified myself with tea and toast, and set off with a bucket, gloves, a trusty spade, and a bag of 50 daffodil bulbs. Today was going to be the day. Surveying my mostly thriving garden, I admired the handiwork of past me. Back in the spring, she had tirelessly planted rows of perennials in front of the azaleas, followed by a cheerful border of impatiens. Visitors were greeted by bursts of pink and white blooms, all thoughtfully arranged. I ignored the crisp remains of a neglected evergreen and hoped future me would stumble upon a miraculous regrowth the next spring. Clever me, I thought, smugly praising past me's efforts, yet a pang of guilt accompanied the thought of yanking out the still blooming impatiens. Frost loomed on the forecast, and removing them now would save future me from dealing with their frozen remains. So present me rolled up her sleeves and got to work. As I wrestled with the impatiens' stubborn roots, a new idea struck. Perhaps these plants could be relocated to the woods behind the house. Could they reseed and surprise future me with a mystery garden? Inspired, I deposited the plants gently, roots intact, into the yard waste bin. Future me would thank me for this foresight, surely. But as I toiled, my past me's flaws began to emerge. The soil quality diminished at the far end of the garden, clear evidence of my past me's laziness. Future me chimed in, urging, "Add compost here. The daffodils will need enriched soil." Meanwhile, present me muttered, "Why did I even buy 50 bulbs? What was past me thinking?" Despite my grumbles, the bulbs were finally planted. My aching back and weary knees testified to my labor. But I couldn't help but imagine the dazzling spring display. Future me promised grand rewards, and past me smugly reminded me of my joy over the summer blooms. As I cleaned up, 2 stray bulbs rolled out of the bag. Future me gasped, "Don't forget those!" Present me scooped them up and set them aside. "That's a future problem," I whispered. This has been Christy Page with greenprints.com.
Thank you for listening to GardenDC. This episode was made by real humans. It was produced and hosted by myself, Kathy Jentz, with editing assistance from intern Cavett Ireland. The Let the Sunshine music interludes are by James Mulvaney. If you like this episode, you may also enjoy listening to GardenDC podcast episode 237, Edible Native Plants, episode 159, Herbal Libations, episode 59, Gardening with Tropical Plants. By the way, you can become a listener supporter. Find that link in our show notes. Another way to support this podcast is to subscribe to our monthly digital publication, Washington Gardener Magazine. To do so, go to Washington Gardener or Washington Gardener blogspot. You can find Washington Gardener on Twitter or X, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Pinterest at WDC Gardener, and on Facebook at Washington Gardener Magazine. And be sure to leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast listening app. Please take a moment to share us on social media with hashtag GardenDC and with your gardening friends so other gardeners can find us too. Here's my favorite chocolate zucchini bread recipe. It's as easy as it is delicious. You will need 1 chocolate cake box mix, 2 cups shredded zucchini, 3 large eggs, a half a cup of melted butter, a 1/4 cup milk, 1 cup dark or semi-sweet chocolate chips. Preheat the oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit and spray 2 loaf pans with cooking spray. In a large bowl, stir the eggs, milk, butter, and dry cake mix together. Add the zucchini and mix it in well. Fold in half the chocolate chips. Divide the batter evenly between the 2 loaf pans, sprinkling the other half of the chocolate chips over the top of the batter. Bake for 45 minutes and enjoy.